Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we take the sources you send us, get right into them, and pull out everything you need to know.
And today we've got something really rich. It's excerpts from what looks like a memoir or maybe a novel based on real life.
Yeah, it feels very personal. It tracks a life through Victorian and Edwardian England, big social changes happening then.
Absolutely. And it centers on the narrator's relationship with his uncle, this very ambitious figure, and his journey into the world of business, specifically patent medicine. It's quite a ride.
So our mission today is to unpack all of that for you. We'll pull out the key facts, the insights, the surprising bits from these pages, basically give you the shortcut to understanding this whole story of ambition, status, love, loss, all of it.
We'll follow the narrator from this really strict upbringing, knowing your place,
Yeah.
to the crazy heights of commercial speculation, and then grappling with the fallout.
Okay, let's dive in. The sources start us off at a place called Bladesover House. What was that like? Sets the scene, doesn't it?
It really does. Bladesover is presented as his social datum, like the reference point for everything. It's described as, spacious, dignified.
Sounds grand.
Yeah, but also really pretentious, conservative.
Yeah.
It embodies this specific type of English life built on a very rigid social ladder, almost feudal, really.
And the source calls it the Bladesover system, right? What exactly does that mean?
Well, it's this idea that society is closed and complete. Everyone has a fixed place.
Fixed by birth.
Exactly. By birth, you've got your betters above, your inferiors below, and the whole point of the system, according to Bladesover thinking, is basically to support the people at the top, the gentry, the quality.
And everyone else just exists for them.
Pretty much. That's the underlying assumption.
And our narrator is there, but he's described as the peculiar and intimate nephew. So kind of inside, but also outside.
That's a good way to put it. He's part of the household, but his position isn't quite standard. He's not exactly family in the main line, not exactly staff. It gives him this unique perspective from the get-go.
Which maybe explains this incident the source mentions.
No.
A rebellion. He blacks someone's eye.
Oh, yeah. Big moment. He gets into a fight with the Viscount's daughter's half-brother. The source calls it open and declared rebellion.
Wow. Against that whole system.
Directly against it. And the description, monstrous white mess, suggests it was quite the scene. The consequences immediate. He's basically exiled.
Exiled to where?
Sent away to live with his uncle Frapp in Chatham.
And Frack's world is different.
Completely different. Stark contrast. Frapp's life is all about hard, joyless devotion to work. No frills, no Bladesover sophistication. And it's steeped in this very traditional, quite severe religious belief. Hell, eternal punishment. These are like really concrete ideas for Frapp.
And the narrator buys into that.
Not at all. Even as a kid, he pushes back, tells Frapp there's no hell, that no God would be such a fool as that, really challenging him head on.
So already questioning things, feeling like one against the world, as the source says.
Yeah, that phrase captures it. He's already developing this pattern of skepticism, whether it's social rules or religious dogma.
But interestingly, before he leaves Bladesover, he finds these forbidden books.
Right. This happens while he's still technically in that world. He discovers a neglected room with books that definitely weren't on the approved reading list.
Like what?
Tom Paine's Rights of Man, an unexpurgated Gulliver's Travels, Voltaire's Candide, Gibbon.
Heavy stuff, radical ideas for that time and place.
Absolutely. And the source says they whetted his taste. They opened his mind to completely different ways of thinking, directly undermining the Bladesover worldview. Made him wonder what else was out there, intellectually.
Okay, so he leaves Bladesover, leaves Frapp's world, and ends up in Wimblehurst, working in a chemist shop with another uncle, Edward.
That's right, Uncle Edward. This phase seems to be about quiet study, him teaching himself Latin, science. He's clearly ambitious, wanting to escape Wimblehurst, which he sees as kind of provincial, maybe a bit cunning, but ultimately limiting.
And what's Uncle Edward like at this stage?
He's described as restless, kind of fretful, talks a lot garrulous. The narrator finds him educational, actually, because he throws out all these discrepant ideas.
Not sticking to one line of thought.
Exactly. And crucially, he's already dabbling in making pills and things. A small-time Napoleon of domestic conveniences, as the text puts it.
Huh. Foreshadowing indeed. So then comes the big move to London. How does the narrator handle that?
It hits him hard. His first impression is just chaos. He calls it a dingy city, feels this sense of implacable condemnation. It's overwhelming.
And he sees his uncle and aunt there as
As adrift in a limitless crowd of dingy people, like they're lost. swallowed up by the sheer scale and grime of it all.
And it's here he meets Marion, his first love.
Yes. He's immediately struck by her beauty, describes it as a fever of longing, but it stalls pretty quickly.
Why?
His lack of position. He feels this enormous gap. Years, toil, waiting, disappointments between his world and hers. Social standing matters hugely.
Meanwhile, Uncle Edward's setup in London isn't exactly impressive, is it?
No, the source mentions dingy wallpaper, and he's got this grand-sounding apparatus for his business.
Which turns out to be
a total facade. The narrator peeks behind the curtain and finds it's just a few bottles labeled A, B, C in a back room. All show very little substance. Appearance versus reality, again.
And this is the context for the Tono Bungay proposal. What's the big idea here?
It's pure marketing over substance. The supremacy of shouting, as the source calls it. Forget making something people need. The key is advertising.
The product itself, this kidney remedy.
Costs pennies to make, literally. But the plan is to sell it for half a crown.
Wow, that's a markup.
It's all about the hype, the advertising spend. That's where the perceived value comes from.
And the uncle has a philosophy about this.
Oh, yeah. He believes the world runs on reciprocal and yielding foolishness. Basically, people want to be convinced, want to buy into the hype.
And his buzzword.
Oh, shit. That's his term for the power of advertising, generating excitement. He dismisses actual science or research too slow, not profitable enough compared to just shouting louder.
But the narrator, he must have struggled with this. Morally.
Big time. He sees it as dishonest, calls the whole thing supreme silliness.
Yeah.
He's still attached to the idea of doing something useful. A path of use and honor, a sane and just organization.
Contrasting with his uncle's view.
Completely. The uncle's attitude is pure pragmatism, bordering on cynicism. You got to take the world as you find it, exploit that yielding foolishness.
So why does he agree to join? Seems like a big leap.
The source suggests it's a moment of crisis for him. The rejection by Marion hits hard. His own path seems uncertain. He feels adrift.
And the uncle's pitch is persuasive.
Partly that, his uncle's strange glamour, his infectious energy, and partly maybe a reluctant acceptance that perhaps the world is kind of foolish and this is how you get ahead in it.
And boom, Tono Bungay takes off.
Like a rocket, exactly. The growth is explosive. Huge advertising campaigns, mapping progress like military generals.
Targeting different regions?
Yeah, Wales, Lancashire, treating it like conquering territory with posters and slogans.
The uncle must have been loving this, that phrase he uses.
The romance of modern commerce, George. He really sees it that way, a grand adventure, like fighting brigands, but with advertising budgets. It's all about the excitement, the scale, the acquisition.
But the actual product
Yeah.
stayed pretty dodgy, didn't it?
Oh, absolutely. The source is clear. The formulas got weaker as sales grew.
Weaker?
Yeah, watered down, essentially. Sometimes they even added a bit of strychnine for kick.
I mean, seriously, strychnine.
Apparently so. A tiny amount, presumably, but still. The uncle's justification was that they gave such value in the promotion, the flotation. The hype was the product.
There's this friend mentioned, Ewart. What's his take on all this?
Ewart offers a more philosophical, almost detached view. He calls it the poetry of commerce.
Poetry.
Yeah, he sees the uncle as a kind of Calvinist of commerce.
Yeah.
Someone who makes things valuable just by declaring them so. Like
Yes.
shouting, Smith's mustard is the best, makes it the best.
Right. Belief creates reality.
Sort of. Ewart basically tells the narrator, don't think Tono Bungay is unusual. This is just how capitalism works. It's gigantic and invincible.
And as the money rolls in, the uncle's life changes dramatically.
Completely. From those dingy lodgings to massive houses, Lady Grove, then building his own huge place, Crest Hill. He's buying up possessions like crazy.
Booty, the source calls it.
Exactly, like spoils of war taken from the public's yielding foolishness. He's in his economically ascendant phase, trying this swift and systematic conversion to gentility.
Trying to become part of the upper class, the old order.
That's the goal. He wants acceptance. He even dreams of getting a title, Lord Tono of Bungay.
Lord Tono.
Can you imagine? But the sources show it's awkward. There are scenes like garden parties where he and the family clearly don't quite fit in, struggling with the unspoken rules of the class they're trying to join.
Okay, so while the business is booming, the narrator's personal life is hitting some rough patches. His marriage to Marion.
Yeah, he marries her, the one he had that fever of longing for. But it doesn't take long for disillusionment to set in.
How so?
He finds her mind commonplace, lacking any faculty of growth or change. They just aren't compatible on an intellectual or even aesthetic level.
Like the furniture example.
Right. Her taste in furniture, the fact their home has no place where one could sit and read, These details highlight the gap between them. She runs the house efficiently, with hard, bright efficiency, but for him, it becomes an intolerable situation.
And the sources mention Mr. and Mrs. Grundy, figures of Victorian morality.
Yes, Ewart brings them up. They represent that sort of stuffy, judgmental social code that polices behavior, especially around relationships and pleasure. He sees it as creating needless complications, almost like a social disease.
And the narrator shares that view.
Very much so. He dreams of getting rid of all that decency and indecency, wanting things to be plain and straight, based on knowledge and real connection, not arbitrary rules.
Which maybe leads to the affair with Effie.
It seems likely. That relationship is described quite differently, more about keen, sensuous desire and pleasure. It's a contrast to the initially idealized but ultimately frustrating marriage with Marion.
And Marion finds out.
She does. Not directly from him, though. Someone else, Smithy's brother, tells her.
How does she react?
Shock, disbelief. Didn't dream, she says, implying she felt he couldn't deceive her. The narrator, maybe a bit callously, views the discovery as just a necessary consequence and natural thing.
But the separation itself is still painful.
The source suggests so. It describes the final hours, Maria's bitter comment about his aunt, and her weeping, showing real strong emotion perhaps for the first time in their marriage depicted in the text. The narrator feels his profoundest persuasion of irreparable error. He recognizes the damage, the hurt caused, even if the marriage wasn't working.
Okay, shifting back to the business side. Tono Bungay's ride hits turbulence. This leads to quap. What on earth is quap?
Yeah, quap. It's introduced by a character named Gordon Nasmyth. It's this radioactive stuff found on a place called Mordet Island.
Radioactive.
Yeah.
In this era.
Exactly. The descriptions are really striking, very unsettling. Cancerous, maleficent and strange, a disease of matter. It's like the source is grappling with this new, poorly understood force.
And why does it suddenly become important?
Because the uncle's empire is collapsing. He's facing a financial crisis. Pressure from boom sounds like a market downturn or a credit squeeze.
Money's tight.
Very tight. He's trying to keep things afloat with imagination, claiming he's sound, but really holding loads of unrealizable securities. Basically, the money isn't really there.
So the quap is a last resort.
A desperate one. They decide to go steal it from Mordet Island. The narrator frames it as this dramatic, almost heroic act saving the situation, acting with American colors, like bold frontier risk-taking. A final whoosh.
The trip to get it sounds grim.
Absolutely awful. Terrible weather, seasickness. The stuff itself is greasy as butter and hard to handle.
And dangerous.
Yes. The men loading it get sores on their hands, suffer from inflammation, can't sleep. Clear signs of radiation sickness, even if they don't fully understand it. There's even a mutiny attempt.
And the narrator has a bad dream about his uncle.
Yeah, a nightmare where his uncle's throat is cut. A real sense of foreboding, of doom, hanging over the whole venture.
And when they get back?
It's too late. The uncle is ruined. It's all up, he says.
And that image of the unfinished house, Crest Hill.
Yeah, it becomes this powerful symbol of the whole era as the narrator sees it. All that frantic, aimless building up and pulling down. Yeah. All the enterprise and promise just crumbling away.
Then the escape by airship. Seriously.
Lord Roberts, yes. It sounds completely mad. A clumsy start, flying by moonlight over southern England, getting lost.
Running out of fuel.
Running out of fuel, and then this terrifying descent, just falling down through the air like a clumsy glider. It's less a triumphant escape, more like another kind of crash.
Which brings us towards the end, the reflections. What happens to the uncle?
He ends up in France, sick, delirious sometimes. But he has these moments of clarity, talking about life, wondering about an afterlife, hoping there's something that won't die.
And he asks the narrator for affirmation.
Yeah, almost like a child seeking reassurance. It's quite touching, in a way, despite everything. And then he dies.
How does the aunt take it?
Her grief is described as very deep, very maternal. She says, "He was my child. Life has knocked him about for me. It wasn't fair." It adds this really human layer to the downfall of this big, ambitious man.
And the narrator, does he face consequences?
He gets a kind of weird fame. People see him as this daring, modern species of brigand because of the escape. He's popular, ironically, even though he feels they basically just wasted people's savings.
He reconnects with Beatrice, too, another love interest.
Briefly. But their affair now feels like an irrelevance, a futility against the backdrop of the financial crash and what he calls social disorganization.
She leaves him.
She chooses to go back to her husband, Carnaby. She feels the wealth, the lifestyle has spoiled her, that she can't be the partner he needs. The source calls it a bitter wisdom that wealth can ruin people too.
There's a final image of England from a boat trip.
Yes, on the Thames. He sees the beautiful surface, old buildings, gardens, parliament. But underneath he perceives greedy trade, base industrialism, aimless empire.
Forces running to waste.
That's his phrase. He sees it all as undirected, wasteful energy. Even Bladesover, his childhood touchstone, seems smaller, shivered and shriveled when he thinks about it now, tainted by the memory of the uncle's kind of brash, modern wealth.
So after all this, inventing engines, the Tono Bungay saga, the escape, where is he left?
Still searching. That's the key. He describes himself as seeking, disbelieving, always, dissatisfied always. He's still wrestling with these big, unanswering problems, even with his technical achievements in aeronautics. His life, he concludes, has fundamentally been about that search.
Wow. We've covered so much ground. From that rigid social structure of Bladesover through the absolute frenzy of Tono Bungay, the complexities of love and marriage, the quap adventure, the crash. It's quite a journey.
It really is. And that core tension is always there, isn't it? The pull of ambition, wealth, status, that whoosh, versus this deeper search for meaning, for something solid, something purposeful in a world that seems increasingly chaotic and, well, wasteful.
And even though it's set over a century ago, those questions still feel incredibly relevant. Thinking about ambition today, how rapid change affects us, the search for authentic connection, trying to find purpose when things feel messy or aimless. What part of this whole story really sticks with you?
For me, it's that ending. He's achieved things, survived incredible events, but he's still seeking. Is that the human condition, maybe, especially in a rapidly changing world? Is the search itself the only constant? Or, as the narrator seems to wonder, is there something more substantial to find beyond all the wasted and wasteful and futile efforts he witnessed and participated in? Definitely leaves you thinking.